Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Andrew here, doing an episode just to talk a little bit about some of the recent election results that have come in. Nothing too surprising, but just kind of thought it would be something worth sharing and just to kind of keep kind of that narrative going of kind of where the electoral politics are. So, being in Georgia, definitely wanted to talk about this one race. This is the Georgia State House District 121. Now, this is a county that, or I should say, a district that was essentially split in half. So, as you can kind of see here on this map, Clark County is, I think it's called technically Clark Athens. It's essentially right around Athens, Georgia. Obviously, with it being a college town, you're going to have um, more kind of liberal election results. And essentially, they kind of split it in half, gave one to the other, one to the other, to kind of dilute some of that. Interesting enough, definitely is like I don't say a powerhouse, but definitely has produced some interesting candidates who have come in for state house and everything like that. Congressman Barrow. He was kind of around during kind of the Blue Dog, early 2010s, and late 2000s. He was someone who was running in this area. He came from there. I think he was maybe the mayor, and then he went into Congress, and he kind of bounced around just trying to keep a seat. But he's from this area, and he ran for, I think, Supreme Court, state Supreme Court this last round, and I think he did something before that as well. So definitely, they're producing people, and what's ultimately kind of the big driver here is that this was a close election. So this was might have been one where maybe turnout and some of these other kind of things, you only had about 5,000 people. That's kind of about what you're going to see in these off year elections. And essentially kind of, I don't know if I'd say it was always kind of a, hey, Democrats are going to win this one, but this was definitely one that, especially from being in the DPG, wasn't really too much on the radar as far as other ones go. Other ones, I think we definitely kind of were putting a little bit more resources in and everything like that, but this is definitely a great win for the Democrats. I'm not familiar with either one of these two candidates, but overall, it's kind of a that trending signal, especially, and what I thought was super interesting about this is that signal that's trending towards the Democrats. I think you're really going to start seeing and identifying where a lot of these um, swings are happening in Georgia. Obviously, in Metro Atlanta, obviously in Gwinnett, this is kind of up near that area. You're going to see a lot of those kind of areas definitely shifting to the left. Because I'll show you another one where I think it's probably not completely indicative of what we've seen, and that's why I want to give both sides of the story here, especially in Georgia. I think, as the state is kind of trending slightly to the left, mostly just because I think of bad Republican politics and candidates mostly. I think what we're seeing is that we're seeing these leftward shifts, and as Georgia is becoming more and more Democratic, you're going to see these shifts, I think, becoming more and more apparent and becoming at the front and center. So definitely an interesting win. He, is going to probably end up running in 2026, so it'll be interesting to see if he still gets that. I think this is something that he could get. But yeah, like I said, it's an interesting one, and I think it kind of tells a full story of, especially on state level gerrymandering and potentially congressional gerrymandering, like we saw in Tennessee 5. Um, I'm sorry, Tennessee 7, and I did another video on that. So go ahead and watch that. If there's any other ones or any other races happening around the country, definitely like and subscribe. Let me know about them so I can follow them. But you're kind of seeing, hey, like this may be gerrymandering stuff, especially if you get a good wave in. You might be able to take some of these districts, especially something like this, where it's intentionally cracked. You might see some of these. We saw a little bit of it with Afton Baines in TN7. Obviously, wasn't enough to get her over the hill. But when you start talking about state elections, this is where I think if I was a Democrat, where I would put a lot of my resources and everything like that. It's going to be in those state races because you got 11,000, maybe 12,000 votes here. Obviously, you'll probably end up being closer. I think usually about Georgia, you're kind of around 25,000 in a midterm election. So I think you're going to see a lot of those kind of races needing to be targeted to really kind of get something going. Especially here in Georgia, a big thing is with the abortion bans and Medicaid expansion and some of these other ones. Democrats really need to focus on the state house races. That's where you're going to get a lot of this change. And one of the big things, I know we're still a little further out, and Republicans really kind of hit their Tea Party wave right at the right time. Democrats need to start making those gains, right? If you expect Democrats to win, not just in 2025, 2026, and maybe have a chance in 2028, okay, you need to start building that momentum. So I've talked about this on Twitter, I've talked about this on this channel. Democrats need to start converting voters. Okay, you need to start getting people who, yeah, they're in that coalition. You need to start pulling from Trump. You need to start having those blue dogs going in there into a district like this or some of these other ones where, hey, maybe, when the momentum's going, maybe you can take someone who, say, maybe Afton Baines or maybe someone in between that and where we see here at 50-50, maybe a blue dog or some of these better branded politicians might be able to kind of put them over. So definitely things that I think should be, kept in mind as you're looking at these races. Democrats need to win these state races, these state house. Obviously, this is one of, say, 120, 150, so however many we have in the state house. But, you know, getting those wins, maybe, hey, maybe you're barely, if not, about to take the majority in the House, but not the Senate. That's going to be important. But you got to start building those races. And so this is where I'm kind of been really frustrated with the DNC is because I don't think they're providing those resources. I saw something today where they're trying to get $50 million to help out. Like I think it was maybe, oh God, it was like 60 something or more congressional state races and stuff like that. That stuff you've got to do. They typically fall short on that, but you've got to do that if you're expecting that kind of, I don't want to say grassroots roots, but that more statewide shift, especially something here like Georgia. One way to kind of get Georgia to be the model is turn Georgia blue and then start running and operating that state like it should be. And I say this more just kind of like responsible government, cut all the corruption shit out. Maybe you try to increase wages, all this other kind of stuff. And definitely Georgia's got the potential to do it. You do that, and then it's like, okay, hey, maybe Texas could be, you know, maybe Georgia's a model for what people are trying to do in Texas. Maybe it's a model for what they're trying to do in down in Florida. Mississippi would be another great one. You start building those kind of those levels, and then you can start saying, okay, we're growing in Georgia, we're winning in the state house. If we can do the same in Mississippi with maybe a slightly different coalition, then you can win Mississippi as well. So definitely something to keep an eye on. The other one is looks like they're maybe going to another runoff for the special election. This here is, in kind of the northwest part of Atlanta. As you can see, this is Alpharetta. I believe this is the district. Let's see. Yeah, so right here, you can see Alpharetta is kind of the northwest, kind of in between. You've got 75 and 85, and so they kind of, cross in here into downtown, really. And, as you're kind of going up, and you got 400 in the middle, essentially between 400 and 75. And I like to say just on the other side of the lake here. So this is up in Canton. So as you can see, this is Marietta. You've got Alpharetta, and right up here in Canton. Um, uh, you can kind of see it's over here closer to Cummings. That's another big one. And this is close to the district of Rich McCormick. Rich McCormick typically kind of does a lot of Milton, Roswell, and those areas. And I think there's another guy who's does a lot in Marietta and kind of that northern part. Obviously, MTG is more in the northwest. But what's interesting about this is, and I can speak for this personally, is a lot of people kind of want to be in Atlanta, but they don't want to be east, and they kind of want to be closer to a lot of stuff in Marietta. They've been kind of going up here towards Canton, Woodstock, and that area. You're kind of going up more towards the mountains. Obviously, you've got the lakes. That's a great kind of place to go. I believe that's Alatoona. So definitely some good places to live, everything like that. So I would say it has potential as it's kind of becoming more and more blue, that kind of demographic you kind of start seeing there. The only issue, and I think this district is going to go Republican as we'll talk about the results that have come in. This is still kind of more on the excerpts of Atlanta. I do not think, especially with some of the demographics up there, I don't think this is where you're going to see a lot of swing to the Democratic side to where they're going to put it over like we saw in the last one. But definitely something to kind of keep an eye on. Forsyth County is another one here that's kind of up and coming. Um, it's incoming, not up and coming. Kind of up here in this area. I think these are the state lines, maybe right here. Um, that's another part that's been really growing and shifting towards um, Democrats. So I'm interested on this one, and I think the results are kind of interesting. So as we see here, we see, I mean, it's a difference. If it was just a 1-to-1, it'd be a difference of, say, what is that, 33 votes. Um, Now, the important part is, you had what, I mean, 5,000 people come out. That's half of what was in the other one. So I think you'll obviously see some coalescing around Republicans. Democrats will end up, probably, I say, they'll probably lose. It might be a 60-30, or I should say 60-40 kind of race. But it's still important, still interesting. And these are going to be the places where you're going to start seeing, I think, as Atlanta's growing and gets Fulton County getting bluer and bluer, you're going to start seeing the exurbs getting bluer and bluer. Now, this is one of the reasons I don't know if I've talked about it on this channel, but I've definitely one of the issues I've had with the Democratic Party, really in Atlanta, is, and we can kind of show this here, is as we talked about, here's the district. Let me zoom this in a little bit. So you can see Fulton County it's this weird shape that kind of comes up into here. And then you've got Cobb County, you've got Gwinnett over here, and then you've got Forsyth up here, and then I forget which one this is. I think it's is it Barrow or one of those counties? I forget what exactly one it is, but and then you have DeKalb that's right down here. So the issue is that I've always had is that, and I've told people this when I used to live up here in Sandy Springs, it was closer for me to go to Cobb County and DeKalb County meetings than it is to go down to downtown Fulton, literally down in Atlanta. So one of the issues that I've had is it's like Atlanta's just so big, and with the way that the counties and everything's like that structured, what you really need to do is you need to have someone really kind of all over, have a party chair all over Metro Atlanta. Um, and obviously you have the county chairs, but you need to have someone coordinating kind of those resources because that's what we saw on the ground is DeKalb County did a really good job. They've been there. They've been super institutionalized. They've got, obviously the demographics and got the upper income people. So, and you definitely have the growth out there towards Petrie Corners, Dunwoody, all that area. Um, there's a lot of resources there. And especially once you start talking about um, Sandy Springs, Roswell, Alpharetta, Milton, those kind of areas where, especially in Fulton County, that's where pretty much all the Republicans are. Sandy Springs and then Buckhead. Um, you need to pull resources from one area to another. I can get people from DeKalb County to come over and door knock in Alpharetta. So it shouldn't be an issue of bodies, right? Cobb County is definitely growing. They're probably the third largest here in Atlanta Metro, outside of um, DeKalb and Fulton. They're probably one of the biggest. Same thing with Gwinnett County over here where Lawrenceville is. Pulling resources from these different counties to kind of help kind of everybody out. That's how you're going to win and get a race like this to be put over the edge. That's how you're going to turn Georgia blue is by sharing these resources, especially where you have a lot of Democratic support, and you just got to get them out. And we saw that kind of in the 2024 election when I was working with the Biden Harris campaign. Pulling those people in, driving people out, getting people from different counties and different party organizations. Really needing to create that kind of cohesion. That's how you're going to win these elections. So That's how I think this race up here in Canton. That's how they're going to be able to win in the future in that part of Atlanta. And it's really just going to be about, okay, can you get the resources, can you get the bodies and things like that. The last big one that people are going to be talking about, it's the mayor's race in Miami. This was the runoff. So let me see. Yep. So this is the top one up here. Um, Elaine Higgins, she ended up winning. Really, kind of the big takeaway is that Democrats won. They haven't won, I think, in like 30 something years. And you can read it all here on the screen. But um, I think it's interesting because it kind of shows, okay, this Hispanic population, are they coming in and winning? Are they trying to get, um, the voters that they need? Are they bringing in working class Hispanics? Yeah, what does that Cuban population work? And how does that impact them? I don't know. I have not been able to dig into this as much as I would like to, but it's something I think is going to be interesting to watch, and I'm personally, and I know a lot of other people like Chuck Todd and others, Florida should be blue and much bluer, much more competitive than it is. I think in the presidential it won five, maybe 8 points towards Trump. So it's definitely something they can win, especially in the statewide races, especially when you've got more split ticket, all that kind of good stuff. So it's something that they can do. They just need to get the people and execute them or execute it. I think I don't know anything about this candidate, so I don't know if I can say if she's good or not. But she's definitely someone who, if she is the right candidate to get people out, then it's something that they really need to explore. I'm looking at this now, 22,000 votes. Like I said, it's not that many, especially when you start looking at some of these other ones here with 15,000 and others. You're looking at maybe 40, 50,000 people in an off year election came out to win. So, and she won with 60% of the vote, from what it looks like. So, it's doable. It's something that Democrats can do. I think the ball is in their court, and that's why I say they got to start focusing on the state houses. They need to build the brand. They need to get those conservative blue dogs winning in seats to where they can just be competitive and start winning. There's districts that we've showed here before where they're doing great. They're winning with just kind of their normal guy. Well, hey, maybe in Canton and maybe something a district one between Canton and Fulton. Maybe there's one in there where Blue Dog Dem could come in and kind of help kind of shift it from a red to maybe a light blue. And then as demographics change, as the cities, like Atlanta gets bigger and Miami, then you can maybe start seeing some of these more liberal, progressive candidates kind of coming in. So it's something I'm going to be following, something I'm going to be looking at a little bit more. Definitely worth keeping in mind. So I'm going to keep following a lot of the elections that we have as they're coming out. But like I said, if there's anything that I missed, any comments or any topics you guys want me to discuss, or even just to chat a little bit, please put it down in the comment section and and don't forget to like and subscribe. So appreciate you guys coming in and listening to me talk. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.